All right. Um, I guess welcome, welcome to another episode. I'm gonna start calling these episodes. I think. Um, anyways, welcome to another episode. Um, Daniel and Michelle, O.G Rose, they're known as O.G Rose on YouTube. They recently did a wonderful reflection on transparency and honesty and the sort of power dynamics. Um, and I wanted to reconnect this notion of honesty and transparency with the recent event of me being vulnerable and was it the episode of giving thanks where I gave thanks to Cadell and Davud and OG Rose, and then I shared a sort of side realization that ended with me crying. uh, and so I want to connect that event of me crying and this understanding of honesty and transparency. Um, and I want to revise it in the sense of not revising what Daniel and Michelle are saying, but revise our understanding of this dynamic, this concept of transparency and honesty. Because I think what Michelle and Daniel kind of got at with transparency and honesty is that the honesty and transparency can be dishonest the moment it's sort of meant to exemplify or perpetuate an image, a sense of authority, right? Um, you know, that is typically the dangerous play with transparency and honesty. And right now, you could say we're definitely in a culture of transparency and honesty, where it seems to be the move, it seems to be the power move to be vulnerable openly and gather um, power in some very ambiguous sense. So, but again, I want to connect it to me crying one episode. I do think this is my own personal reflection on this. I do think what led me up to this crying was really like an event. Really, like all my videos, you could say, they have been my therapy, my way of talking to the void. I like to imagine that I'm talking to people, but honestly, in a real physical way, I'm talking to a void. Um, and I am seeing an image of myself confronting it and talking to it. And so I do it I do it live, right? You could say that doing it live is very vulnerable. Recording it live is very vulnerable because you succumb yourself to random noises, random moments of realization. Um, and I come in here really without a script. I come in here without knowing necessarily what I'm going to say. You could say my act of recording live is only honest in the sense that I have a vision, to use Daniel Gardner's distinction between vision and plan, is that I have a vision of what I'm going to say, but I don't have a plan on how I'm going to say it, the way I'm going to say it. Even this digression isn't planned, but the vision was to talk about transparency and honesty and and my relation to the event of crying, right? So this event of crying, actually, if I'm going to be honest, right, um, I still feel really embarrassed. If I'm being honest, I feel genuinely embarrassed. Um, and it's funny because it's not a logical embarrassment. You could say embarrassment is never logical or rational in any ways. And so it's not, you know, it's funny because, a lot of the comments that I received afterwards, from my dear friends, Davood and Cadell and O.G Rose, Michelle and Daniel, um, they were all endearing comments. And so there is no reason, keyword, no reason to be or feel embarrassed. And yet I felt a sense of shame and embarrassment. Um, you just want to hide after a while, not show face. And it's difficult. But I think this notion of transparency and honesty is going to be helpful here in the sense of it becomes, in my opinion, harmful to be transparent to maintain an image or maintain a kind of identity. But I think when transparency and honesty really play a role, a real role that is stripped of its power, you could say, is when the subject is no longer in control of that power, right? To me, transparency and honesty is when that power has fled the grips of the subject, right? Um, to me, honesty and transparency can only be real in the sense that the subject realizes in that very moment they are fundamentally alienated and fundamentally helpless. And only in this sense are we being honest and transparent. And so there's several ways that I can interpret my there's several ways to, no, I won't even say mine. There's several ways to interpret this event when I had cried in my one of my videos, right? It was definitely not planned. But I remember thinking about this and going, you know, how many times do people cry on YouTube videos? And it's like always it's such an act, like I used to always laugh and be like, like this person had to literally like record themselves crying. You know what I mean? Like they had to set up the camera and like do this cry. You see this in most cases with like apologies online, um, and so on. So, but again, it's supposed to give that presentation of honesty and transparency, like, oh, look, they're crying, right? But in some ways, that's still a kind of acting out. It's still a acting out. Um, and I wouldn't, and this is the difficult part because I feel like there's something very ironic and very paradoxical here. Because I recently wrote a piece about tears. Like there's something about tears that it's true. Like an object of desire was dropped and the tear dropped, the rolling down the face. Um, there is something true about tears, but it's not necessarily true that the subject knows what has been dropped, so to speak, right? The subject does not know what's been dropped, and so they cry. Some people say things like, I don't know why I'm crying, but I'm crying. Um, and so we can understand it in this way. But, anyways, going back to transparency and honesty, um, the only way, again, for transparency and honesty to be without its power dynamic is when the individual has become transparent to himself only in the sense that they have dropped the identity. They have reached the limits of their imaginary relations with their identity. And so in this case, this is where the paradox happens. This is where the honesty and transparency really manifest. This is when the person realizes that they have been an honest liar. I like playing on this thing, that you have been an honest liar, right? There's people that believe that they're just honest, telling the truth, perpetuating some type of image and representation of themselves as an honest man, maintaining power in that honesty. And then there is a man that knows he's lying, but falsely attributes the power as if he has it by lying. And so he maintains a sort of secretive power by lying when he really doesn't have it. So it's a kind of like lying is a sort of like impotence for I can't have it, so I'm going to lie. I'm going to give the false image that I do have it. So I'm going to give and hide the impotence. Whereas the honest, the person that believes they're being honest in the most truest fashion, they are still maintaining a sort of phallus. They're maintaining a understanding of their image in its perfection, right? I'm honest, you're not, so on. Me being honest, be honest with me, everything like that, right? But the real way between transparency and honesty, in my opinion, is when the individual, the subject, realizes that really we are an honest liar, that I am still lying, but honestly lying. Right? And this is different between the liar that believes his lies and then the honest man that believes his honesty. This is different. But more like I am honestly lying. And so only when I'm honestly lying do I become transparent to myself. When I realize that what I am is not what I am, but because I cannot express otherwise, I say what I am, so to speak. And so this is when, in my opinion, the transparency sort of occurs. You see past yourself. You see through yourself, right? You see through the limit. The limit becomes transparent to you. And this is, and to me, this is the honest moment. You know, because transparent, the notion of trans is crossing beyond, shifting. So this notion of transparent, when you have become beyond yourself, beyond that identification, identity, identity identity, that it is honest, it is real. It is real because you are honestly lying. You know, so I know I wanted to say much more on this, but you know, and I think if we put it and frame it in this way, we can look at my event of crying. There's several ways to interpret that, right? There is a way in which people can interpret this from the outside perspective, like, oh, he's doing this for attention, he's acting out, he's perpetuating an image. But then there's the more the honest part, which is the acting out is also the transparency, right? That I have been an honest liar. I have lied to myself. I have lied to myself all these years without me knowing it was a lie. So it's an honest lie, right? Which reaches the moment of transparency, right? Which is the tears, right? The tears and the transparency. The sort of crossing over and beyond. Where are the tears going? Under, beyond. They're transparent. They're going over. So, but just to be more careful, it doesn't necessarily mean that the subject knows that they're being transparent. I would say it's most of the time the subject does not know they are being transparent and honest in this case. But for me, when it comes to the tears, right? And again, I meant this whole video to connect it back to my event, and then also in the conjunction with the topic of O.G Rose and transparency and honesty, is that the tears are honest by themselves alone. Because they are transparent, because they go and cross, they go under. The person now, and I love this dichotomy because in our visual culture and on our acting culture, right? The actor, when he has to cry, he has to think about something that makes him cry, right? But it's funny because it's an honest lie, right? He has to find something in honest that makes him cry, and then he acts. He acts the scene, and so he's crying. But the tears that the actor invokes are never the tears in which he acts from. It is from this other thing out. It is outside of the stage, right? If I want to bring um, Lacan's distinction between the world and the stage, you can understand that the tears do not, the tears may represent and arrive on the stage, but they always come from outside of the stage. They come from the world. Um, so I think if I were to, reflect on my event of crying, is that no matter what I'm saying, what is being shed tearfully is the manifestation of transparency and honesty. But it's not me, the subject, that is being honest and transparent. It is the tears that are honest and transparent. It's just you don't know what is being honest. What is it that is transparent, and what is it that is being honest? But it still does not take away that there is something that has manifested in its honesty and in its transparency. Um, so in that sense, when we look at honesty and transparency, we strip away the power of the subject. Like I would say, real honesty and transparency is sort of beyond the agency of the subject. Rather, the subject is sort of subjected to transparency and honesty. And so that's why we run into this paradox of I am sorry for being an honest liar. I am sorry and not sorry for being an honest liar, which I very much enjoy this statement of being an honest liar. That the honest is sort of on me, on top of me, honest liar. But anyways, yes, I think the only way to handle transparency and honesty while stripping the power of the subject, because that is what fundamentally O.G Rose, Daniel, and Michelle Garner kind of showed, is that there's still kind of power dynamic being created with this notion of like, look at me, I'm so transparent, you're not. Look at me, I'm so honest, and you're not. But I think a real sense of transparency and a real sense of honesty is when the subject, in some ways, feels the powerlessness of their agency and the helplessness of their own agency. And in that sense, you can see it in a tear. It's a tear, like I'm always going to say, is always honest, but the actor doesn't have to be honest in its acting, right? So it's an honest liar. But anyways, I hope you guys I hope you guys enjoyed that kind of play. Um, Obviously, my forte or my thing with philosophy is I like playing with words. I think the words and the body is very closely aligned. The fact that metaphor is literally a notion or understanding of a figure of speech, a figure like body is a figure of speech. Um, there is, something there. So I'm always playing with words in a bodily fashion. Um, and yes, so in my opinion, the body sort of extends as a language. The body as a language. Okay. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed that. Take care.